Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. This is Nephilim VA bringing you the 37th chapter of Inheritance written by A is for Amy 71 on AO3. Last time, Izuku got a haircut, and now internships begin. What will he learn? Let's find out, but first, the trigger warnings. This fanfiction is for mature audiences with canon-typical violence and a trigger warning for major character death. If that isn't your style, then I recommend Shades of Green, which is written by Maybe It's Friendly on AO3. It can be found on my channel! Canon Divergence is the name of the game and indulges the what-ifs of Midoriya Izuku having a quirk. With that being said, the chapter summary is as followed. Izuku begins his internship and gets a small taste of what endeavor is like. Now I implore you to sit back and relax whilst I read to you. Chapter 37. Are you sure you have everything? Izuku's father asked for the third time as Izuku slipped on his shoes. I'm sure, he answered for the third time. I know you're going to be just across the city, but you can never be too careful, his father continued, even as they left the apartment together. Izuku was holding a duffel bag in addition to his school bag. Endeavor has been told everything he needs to know, and you'll be staying in a dormitory full of sidekicks and... Izuku let his father ramble, aware that he was saying these things to reassure himself more than his son. Endeavor's agency was second only to Might Tower as far as security went, and Izuku had no doubt that he'd be perfectly fine while he was there. All Might and Sir had given him similar speeches about safety protocols and what to do in an emergency. It was a wonder that Izuku didn't feel more apprehensive than he did with all of the warnings and lectures he's endured from nearly every adult in his life over the past couple of days. At the school, they had all met in the classroom to get their hero costume cases, and then Aizawa saw them to the train station and gave them final instructions. Todoroki had been strangely silent about Midoriya going to Endeavor Agency, even though Izuku knew that his classmate was also going to be joining him for the next week. Izuku went to stand beside him, but suddenly realized that Ida had not said anything to their classmates about behaving in a way that demonstrated that the meritorious reputation of the school was not unfairly earned or something. In fact, the deputy class rep had been uncharacteristically quiet for the past week, though that could be because of the heavy emotional toll of having his brother so gravely injured. It had been revealed that Ingenium had suffered irreparable spinal damage, and would almost certainly never walk again. Izuku shouldn't let him go to his internship without at least a word of moral support or encouragement. Ida! He called out, jogging after him before the taller boy had a chance to disappear into the crowd. Ida! Uraraka was suddenly there beside Izuku, obviously for the same reason. She shared a look with Izuku when Ida stopped, but did not immediately turn around. When he did face them, his face was composed into a fake, bright and cheerful expression. Ah yes, good luck on your internships, you two. I'm sure you'll learn a lot in the coming... Ida! Uraraka said. We're worried about you. Izuku nodded in agreement and was concerned when he saw Ida's shoulders sag, as if they just added a weight to them. You haven't been yourself, Izuku said quietly. We've noticed, and we've been giving you space to deal with your personal stuff, but we still want you to know we care. Yeah, Uraraka added. I know we've all been crazy busy and excited about the internships, but we're never too busy if you need someone to talk to. Ida looked glossy-eyed for a moment before his backbone straightened and his expression turned determined. I very much appreciate the sentiment, but I'm afraid that I'm the only one who can deal with what I need to deal with right now. Please don't worry about me. I'll want to hear all about everything you've learned when I see you next week.
Oh, okay,
Uraraka said, not sounding convinced at all.
You have our numbers.
I do, thank you, Ida said. Then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd of commuters. Izuku and Uraraka went back to the group together, feeling a lot less jubilant than before. Uraraka's train arrived and she dashed off with a little wave, and Todoroki simply said, "The train we need will be on the other side of the platform." Izuku followed him curiously, and stood waiting for Todoroki to say something else. When he remained silent, Izuku tried to make conversation. "What made you decide to go to your father's agency? I'm sure you had a ton of other top heroes to pick from." "I didn't. It was decided for me," Todoroki said with what passed for a scowl in his perpetually stoic face. "I got offers, but wasn't allowed to pick from them." "Weren't allowed? Doesn't that mean your father really wants to mentor you?" Izuku guessed. Todoroki just looked at him as if that was an adequate answer. "Maybe he's just excited to be able to take you on your first official patrol," Izuku suggested. After saying that, he wondered if All Might or Sir had been disappointed that Izuku would have his first patrol with another hero. Todoroki huffed out a humorless laugh at that. Maybe you're right. Nothing about me excites him more than controlling my every action." Izuku blinked at that, not sure what to make of it. "Do you not get along with your father?" "In a word, no," Todoroki said. "But still, he's the number 2 for a reason. He should be able to at least teach me something during this internship." "Have you not trained with him before?" Izuku asked, feeling bad for having made that assumption. Not everyone got the same advantages after all. Todoroki had refused the offer to go to Izuku's place the other day because he had to train, but that didn't mean it had been with his father. "Oh, I train with him all the time," Todoroki assured him, "but neither of us enjoy it, let's just leave it at that. You'll see what I mean soon enough." Their train arrived shortly thereafter, and they boarded for the trip to the other side of the city. The ride would only be about 15 or 20 minutes, so they had plenty of time to get there when their agenda said they should. Todoroki didn't seem all that inclined to chat during the ride, so they sat in silence, and Izuku observed all of the different commuters, especially those with visible quirks. He spotted Rapid Fire at the end of the car, looking like a college student with a backpack slung over one shoulder. He didn't acknowledge Izuku in any way, and Izuku pretended not to see him. He was supposed to be there to monitor the train after all. He would likely follow Izuku and Todoroki all the way to Endeavor Agency, before returning to whatever else he regularly did for the Might Agency. From the train, they walked 2 blocks to a high-rise building that was very modern-looking, with a large, stylized E on the front entrance. When they went inside, a receptionist was waiting for them with badges on retractable lanyards.
"These will allow you access to most of the department doors, and are keyed to your dormitory rooms, so be sure to keep track of them. They're not easy to replace," she told them. "Endeavor wants you to drop off your things in your rooms and get changed into your costumes. You'll have 15 minutes to meet him in his office on the 17th floor.
Izuku and Todoroki took the packet of papers she offered each of them, then directed them to take the elevator to the 4th floor. Izuku was in room 411, and Todoroki was in room 414. Izuku quickly changed into his costume and met Todoroki in the central common area that all of the rooms faced. Instead of the white costume that was half ice that he had worn before, Todoroki wore a dark blue jumpsuit with white boots, a leather belt with small pouches and 5 tube compartments hanging around it, which Izuku assumed held tools of some sort for hero or rescue work. There were interconnected plates of some kind looped over each shoulder, which fit snugly against Todoroki's body, but Izuku couldn't figure out if they were practical or decorative. As far as costumes went, it was pretty plain. but still looked much better than his previous one. "I hope you're up for this," Todoroki said as they rode the elevator together. "My father isn't exactly a friendly man." Izuku could have counted that Aizawa wasn't particularly a ball of cuddles either, but was certainly respected and a good teacher. He kept his opinion to himself, reserving judgment until after he'd actually met the man. The further the elevator went up, the deeper the lines carved between Todoroki's eyebrows became. When the elevator pinged and the doors slid open, Izuku noticed that the other boy had to take a moment to visibly relax his muscles and unclench his jaw. Within a few seconds, he looked sullen, but not tense.
"Endeavor is expecting you,"
said a woman at a desk outside of a tall black lacquered door.
"Go right in."
Izuku stepped up to the doors and opened the one on the right. He stepped through into a large space that took up at least half of the floor, but the only furniture was a dark, imposing desk with a lamp on it and a low table with a leather couch and 2 matching chairs on either side of it. The only decor was a large painting of a pastoral scene, and the largest Persian rug Izuku had ever seen in his life under it all. It was boring and stark. Despite the earthy tones and huge chandelier and the imposing man wreathed in flames standing behind the desk, the room felt cold. Izuku immediately bowed in respect and gave his greeting. "I'm Midoriya Izuku, in your care this week. Please allow me to learn from you." Endeavor nodded and looked over to his son, as if expecting a similar greeting. If so, he was disappointed. "I'm here, just like you wanted," Todoroki said instead. Izuku looked between them, and you could almost hear the tension vibrating through the room. Endeavor's glare went from Todoroki to Izuku after a moment. "I invited you here to intern in hopes that you would be able to be a worthy opponent for my obstinate son," Endeavor told Izuku. "He has fire powerful enough to rival or even surpass mine, but stubbornly refuses to use it, insisting that ice is enough for him to surpass me." Izuku's eyes widened. Todoroki's fire was that strong, and he didn't use it? Maybe it was the cause of the burn scar over his eye. He could understand being afraid to use a power that had the potential to hurt you like that. "I see," Izuku said, keeping his tone non-committal, even though he really didn't understand at all. "I'll have you facing off against each other and many of my sidekicks while you're here, as well as myself. You'll join the sidekicks for morning workouts, then breakfast, training, and will patrol this afternoon after lunch. If you perform well, you will be allowed to accompany sidekicks on patrols." His eyes shifted to Todoroki, who looked bored and impatient. "Try not to embarrass me." He pressed a button on the phone on his desk and said, "Send in Burnin." The door opened and a young woman with flames for hair strode in with a grin.
"Newbies," she said in a cheerful voice. "I'm Burnin. Come with me and I'll show you the ropes around here."
Burnin wore a costume that looked a bit like an old bellboy or doorman uniform, at least on top. The bottom was very short, with stockings that had visible garter straps holding them up. She was also masked, and appeared to have a medium-sized fire extinguisher strapped to the small of her back as well. Endeavor had already taken a seat at his desk, directing his attention elsewhere, so Izuku followed the peppy woman back to the foyer. Todoroki followed, his manner shifting to calm and even slightly cordial as he nodded at the sidekick in greeting.
"What are your names?"
Burnin asked as they waited for the elevator. "Shoto," Todoroki said. Izuku had almost forgotten that he'd gone with his first name for a hero moniker.
"Needs work," Burnin declared boldly. "Don't worry, one'll come to ya."
"I'm Vanguard," Izuku told her, using his hero name in an introduction for the first time. It felt good. Right.
Ooh, good one, Burnin approved with a grin. Maybe you could give Shoto some pointers.
I'm sure that's exactly what Endeavor wants,
Todoroki said cryptically. If Burnin was aware that Shoto was Endeavor's son, she gave no sign of it. She jabbed at a button on the elevator panel that took them to a floor that looked very much like an expanded version of All Might's personal gym. There were treadmills, stationary bikes, and stair climbers lining one wall. Another wall had tons of free weights as well as weight machines. There were places to stretch and do calisthenics too. There were only about a dozen people currently using the room.
This is where we do morning workouts, Burnin told them. From 6 in the morning to 7 every day, this is where you'll be expected to be, building up muscle and endurance. Unless you're on duty, that is. The night shift has a different schedule. From 7:30 to 9, there'll be training for you two. There'll be a schedule for that in the packet you were given when you got here this morning, but for today you'll be working with me and Kido. We'll give you a half hour with each of us before we switch. Then for the second hour, you'll battle us together. After that, there's a half an hour break. You should come to the bullpen and meet some more of the flamin' sidekicks and see how things work on a normal day. After that, more training for an hour, and then there's the briefing room.
She pointed to a clock on the wall that said it was nearly 7:15.
Go ahead and use the next 15 minutes to stretch and warm up. We'll grab some breakfast and we can get to know each other before we start.
Izuku immediately went over to a padded area of the floor next to a wall that had a bar for stretching. There were also yoga balls, medicine balls, resistance bands, and a stretching apparatus. He went through a series of stretches, ending by grabbing the bottoms of his feet and resting his head against his legs. Shoto was also stretching, but didn't have the flexibility that Izuku had. That was okay, since he probably didn't have a background in gymnastics either. Once he finished stretching, Izuku decided to get onto the elliptical machine, since that would get his heart rate going faster than a treadmill. He wondered if he would be allowed to come to this area earlier than 6, or else be allowed to run up and down the stairwells during his off time. He had missed regular workouts over the past week, because heroics class had been mostly discussions and observations about the sports festival. He wanted to move, and was thrilled that he'd be getting intense workouts starting today. They went to a cafeteria on the first floor for breakfast, where the heroes were able to purchase their meals very inexpensively. Izuku was glad that his meal plan was part of his internship, since he hadn't bought any money in his costume pockets. He supposed he should remember to keep a few hundred yen in there for emergencies. Shoto got a traditional Japanese breakfast set meal, and Izuku followed suit, simply because it was easier. He took his tray and followed Burnin to a table with empty seats, where a couple of other heroes were sitting. "New sidekicks?" one of them asked.
Interns, Burnin told him, so don't ask him what their quirks are. I'm training with them after this, and it's going to be part of my demonstration to come at them not knowing.
"So," the hero said with raised eyebrows, "we're pretending that we don't know that kid is Endeavor's son?"
Yep, he's an intern, no special treatment, Burnin confirmed.
"Got it," the other hero said with an easy smile. "Well, welcome to the agency. My name's Cinder. I can turn rocks into flaming projectiles. You'll find that a lot of the burning sidekickers have flame-based quirks, but not all of us." "Nice to meet you," Izuku said with a wide smile. "My name's Vanguard." "Shoto," Todoroki said with a nod. He wasn't unfriendly exactly, but he definitely didn't show the enthusiasm that Izuku was feeling. "You're both from UA?" Cinder asked as he ate a huge portion of umu rice. Cinder was a burly man with close-cropped white hair, and his costume was basically just orange pants and combat boots. Even so, he appeared to have a light sheen of sweat covering his body. Maybe because he ran hot inside? Izuku knew his own father had a much higher core temperature than normal. "Yes, sir," Izuku said. "Shoto and I are classmates." "First years?" another hero at the table asked. This hero had mostly been paying attention to the television screen mounted near the ceiling by the door while they had been talking. "Yes," Izuku confirmed. "Wait," the woman said after really looking at Izuku. "You were the winner of the sports festival, but you didn't show up for the award ceremony because you got kidnapped." "True," he said, trying not to blush in embarrassment. It hadn't really been his fault he'd been taken like that.
"Vanguard, Shoto, this is Hotspot,"
Burnin introduced. Both boys nodded to her. "Things are getting crazy out there recently. A kid gets taken from the middle of the UA campus, a hero killer's on the loose, and crime is just generally on the rise. All Might's been teaching, and now all of the scum think it's okay to show their faces in public." "That Stain guy's the most worrying if you ask me," Cinder said. "Guy's as crazy as well, he's crazy. Endeavor really wants to be the one to take him down." Izuku had a feeling the man had censored his speech because of him and Shoto. He absently handed the pepper shaker on the table to Burnin and the soy sauce over to Cinder. They both just looked at him for a moment before taking the offered items to season their food. "Ingenium is our classmate's brother. His family is taking it pretty hard from all accounts," Izuku said, thinking of how strangely Ida had been acting. All of the heroes at the table winced and looked sad. "He was a great hero," Cinder lamented, "and a really nice guy." "He's not dead," Izuku pointed out, finally getting started on his breakfast. "He's still a great guy and his quirk is in his arms, so his hero career doesn't really have to be over, does it?" "He can't feel his legs, kid. I appreciate you don't want to believe—" "He's right," Todoroki said quietly, making everyone on the table look at him. Once he recovers as much as possible, he could still do hero work. It would just have to be of a different kind. Izuku nodded and shot Todoroki a grateful look. "Exactly!" Izuku insisted. "The engines in his arms could still move a vehicle, even a specialized wheelchair. Anyway, I wouldn't count him out just yet." "Huh. I guess I just assumed he was done," Cinder admitted.
"Would you give up like that if it happened to you?"
Burnin asked him. "Hell no," Cinder declared. "I'd rig up a wheelchair to have pouches full of rocks for me." Izuku looked pleased that his point had been understood. He didn't believe a serious hero could just give up when things got really rough. There had to be a part of Ingenium that was impatient and longing to get back out there, making a difference. If not, it wasn't because he couldn't physically adapt, but because he'd had enough for other reasons. They finished breakfast and were led to a pair of training rooms on another floor. Todoroki was sent to meet a hero named Kido in one room, while Izuku went with Burnin to one just down the hall. The room they entered was a simple empty square, with windows along one wall. There didn't seem to be any cabinets or equipment, just a bare concrete floor and plain walls.
"Don't worry,"
Burnin told him as she walked to the center of the room.
"Everything around here is fireproof or fire retardant."
Izuku nodded, wondering if that was confirmation that she'd be wielding fire in some way, or if she expected him to.
"Okay, Vanguard," she told him with a smile. "I thought we'd start off with a little sparring. I want to see how you move and react. I'll come at you both using my quirk and my skill. And your job is to evade me or incapacitate me by pinning me or getting me in a hold I can't break out of. Use your quirk or any skills you have too."
"Sounds fair," Izuku said, taking quick stock of his surroundings. He knew that his super strength was a bad idea indoors, especially in the upper floors of such a tall building. He would have to dial it down if he needed it. Other than that, he didn't see any of his other quirks hampering his success.
Let's begin,
she said with a gleeful grin. Thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate all the support you've given me. Internships have begun, and I just can't wait to find out what happens. On a more personal note, I got my exam results back. I have been awarded a distinction grade with 90 out of 100, which is absolutely amazing, and I just wanted to share that with you. All credits go to the original creator of this fanfiction, A is for Amy 71 on AO3. I'd highly appreciate it if you gave this video a like and you subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to be notified of when I next upload. There is no pressure to do so though. Thank you for visiting my cozy corner of the internet. Keep growing my sunflowers. Mwah!